Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. Our next guest harnesses the talents of many. Part of that is helping individuals, teachers, professionals find immediate happiness. They call that the Marilyn initiative. Yes. And she's also a writer. She's also a coach for writers. But you know what? We're going to explore today the notion that we are all writers. Yes, we are. And how does that look in terms of piloting our lives forward? The information that we write about, the views that we take of that. We're going to dig into that today with Marilyn Horowitz joining us on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. As always, nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. And I'm loving the concept that we're all writers.
We were always all storytellers, but now we're also writers because our major methods of communication are email and text.
It is true when you send it's just a simple text, could be one sentence, could be two sentences. You're being intentional about the message that you want to convey, i.e., you really are being a writer within that. And what is a writer? Somebody who observes, partly anyway. And you're sending observations of a situation when you're sending a text as well. I never ever thought of it that way.
Right. Whenever you say what happened was, which we do all the time, what happened was, I tried to park, but the guy pulled in front of me and, then I had to go around the block and, then I met him in the supermarket and, had a nasty word with him and we ended up realizing that we'd gone to the same high school. And that's a story.
Mm.
Isn't
it amazing that there's a story in literally, I'd hate to use the word literal, but literally everything.
That's one of the reasons that we suffer so much is because we keep trying to get clarity, and we forget that everything reality doesn't happen in a way that can be edited. In other words, reality happens and then we make up a story. Remember that old trope that you hear, you can't write and edit at the same time? Well, you can't experience. And one of the difficulties with all of the, and again, it's always giving me a good chuckle, with all the be here now stuff, is that by the time you think that, you're not there anymore. As soon as you say, I want to be present, you're no longer present.
I was just going to ask you, when you said be here now, you're talking about being present.
Yeah, I'm saying it's a joke. I mean, it's not that you can't be present, but if you're able to notate that that's what you're doing, then you blew it.
All right, let's go there, because that was the game changer in my journey about 6 years ago.
I know. I'm poking the bear.
Yeah, but I want to process that. I want to process that. Being present is in the moment. This moment just passed.
That's right.
This one right here just passed. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get a fix on this, that if you are intentional about being in the moment, you're really not, though. That's what I'm hearing from you.
That's exactly right. On a linguistic level, it's a canard, and it's a great moneymaker. You get people who sit in rooms for years and cross their legs and hurt their hips and get upset because they're not present. I mean, it's hilarious to me.
Can we ever be present? I don't think it's possible now that we open this door.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you the answer. In that moment when you went, you were present. We're present between words. We're not present otherwise. That's why you sit and you quiet your mind, because when your mind is quiet, you can be present. But that's because you're not noting that you're present. You've let your witness go away.
But I'm trying to process the fact that if you're being present, the moment already left.
No, that's not true. If you have to think, oh, I'm present,
then it already left.
Yeah. But the moment, that's what I mean about being quiet between thoughts. In that moment when you were just, you were fully present.
Gotcha.
And we don't have any respect for that. And so otherwise we would honor it more. That's why listening to music is so powerful, because you relax into the melody, right? And in that experiential moment of enjoying the melody, that's when you're present. The moment you think, oh, I really love this music, you blew it.
That's a conundrum.
It's a paradox. I mean, life is a series of paradoxes. And so it annoys me because I don't like, one of my rules with myself, remember, I'm a writing coach, so I have the opportunity to make a lot of money off of other people's suffering, right? And I just made a deal with myself after I finally learned how to write, which took a while, that I would not ever make money off of other people's suffering. So that's why I'm a big believer in why writer's block is never writer's block, and why I believe that if you're not writing, it's because you don't know what to write. You need to do research instead of beating yourself up. That there's no such thing as imagination, there's synthesis. And that when you have an original spark, it comes from a moment of quiet when you're present. It comes in that space between thoughts. That lightning bolt it's you in a state of presentness.
Is it safe to assume that if you do have the quote unquote writer's block or you're not feeling inspiration, that just be quiet, just sit in silence and
Research. Both. They're all good. I'm saying, but acknowledge that you're not the problem.
okay.
No, the problem, it's not procrastination. Writers are smart people. Why should you write when you don't know what to write? That's the basic question that has made me so successful.
Does it come down to that most times than not, that somebody,
About your life.
they're not sure what to write at that
When you
moment.
send an email, don't you suffer because you're trying to think of what to say?
There's many times where I'll read an email, I have to reply, I'll put it off.
Because you don't know. You think you're procrastinating. It's not that you don't know what to do.
Yes, and I'm going to add, and I don't want to I'm not ready for the responsibility of writing it. It could be somewhat serious, business related, and I want to make sure I'm, I guess, in the moment, like truly in the moment, where I can process it and write exactly what I'm feeling, as opposed to I just put it over to the side.
Yeah, but the other thing that you could do, and what I have helped people do, is not because mostly more with creative work, is just grab a pad and start scribbling. You're not. I call it private writing. You have no intention of ever putting this in an email, but you have to process your thoughts. And I have a couple of those right now, and I keep writing about them. And I haven't solved. There are a couple of big things that I have to solve, and I just keep writing about them. And I have absolute faith that at one moment, suddenly the knot will untie itself.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go there. Essentially, are we talking about journaling and writing your thoughts down, but not even no filter, just keep writing, even if it's half illegible. You're still just go.
Drivel. I mean, that was one of the premises of Julia Cameron's, morning pages, was that you just would sit there and write 3 pages of drivel. Now, I don't agree with that, because I think that practicing writing drivel is not very useful. I'm kind of in a different planet with that. I did the artist way a couple of times, very helpful. But then I thought, I need to write about something. If I'm going to do 3 morning pages, give me a topic. I don't know what it is.
Well, I agree with you. And if you're just writing word vomiting and just going along there, then it's like you're intentionally just trying to keep writing. No, write what you can, but don't filter it. Like there was a time where
Yes,
I wanted to be a syndicated cartoonist when I was much younger, so I got pretty good handwriting. So if I'm writing, usually it's it's a little cleaner. I had to get out of that mode and just write. So it just dumps. It just freely comes out of my brain to my hand to the pen and just get it down there as fast as possible. But I agree with you. After a certain amount of time, the answer will be revealed in what you're writing.
yes, and I think that's the biggest thing that I was teaching on Tuesday night, which was to say, look, you're the person who has decided that you don't write properly. You're so involved with how you write that you have prejudged yourself. If I don't sit there for my 2 hours every day, and if I don't get a schedule, and I don't, and the answer is no. You're always creating, you're always writing, and the more that you condemn your own process, the less likely you are to do more of it because it's unpleasant. So if you can realize whether your expression, that we're all storytellers, so we make up stories all day long, and we're not given credit for it because it's called lying or embellishing or interpreting, or there's a negative spin on it. And sometimes, yeah, I mean, it's really good. It's not really not good if you have racial prejudices or political preferences or whatever. But what's really good is to notice that there's a storyteller in you, which is not you. It's a voice. People, when you read people's writing, you go, wow, you don't talk like that at all. Because there's another part of ourselves that's the whole point of the self-acknowledgement hug, is to access the synthesis between the mind and the brain. Because there's a whole place, it's like a widget that and all of a sudden, boom, this thing pours out, and you go, I don't want to write this email because I really don't like this guy, and I think he's gunning for my job. And I just feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to fail. I have no idea how to even write this, but I can't not write it. So what am I going to do? And then what happens is you go, oh God, And somehow, the phone rings or, you get a message on your thing, you get hungry or whatever, and then you come back at 6 o'clock and you go, I know exactly what to do. And you start off by saying, as you said in the meeting at 4 p.m. on Thursday, and you quote him verbatim because you took notes, my understanding was blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you're off the defensive, you're in control. You realize that the whole problem was the guys out to get you. And, you deal with it.
Hmm.
But our emotional reactions happen much faster than our thoughts, and our emotions, unfortunately, the party that's going on, you never know who's on first, right? You keep passing the torch back and forth. But the truth is, your thoughts and your repeated thoughts really generate your emotions, and this is what people forget. People think, "Oh, I'm feeling this, then I can think about it." No, you've thought about it, you've come to a bad conclusion. That's why you feel crappy. That's the basic. And people don't want to acknowledge that you have to work on that.
So I've heard there are parts to our personality, not talking about split personality, something totally different, parts of your personality. When we write, is that really one of the parts of our personality coming through?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
If you're willing to appreciate that you have this special power, which we all have.
Hmm.
So, you know,
Do you find when you write, now maybe this is going a little deep, but when you write, let's say you write one piece of work. Now we have another one. Now we have another one. Is the voice essentially the same for you? Or could you say, it was a different part of my personality for that piece of work? That was a different
so
personality there.
very much so, when I'm having to do something with business, I'm a very tough person. I'm not at all like this. I'm like, I asked you to do this. Could you please do it now? Thank you very much. I mean, I'm a business person. And I'm not a mean person, but
Oh, you have
I,
expectations. That's it.
I'm the king. I'm not the queen. I'm the king. I'm like, do it. You know? And when I'm on the phone with you, I wish our podcasts were longer because you're so interesting to talk to.
Likewise.
And because you're so tuned in, the conversation is always like a fire starting. It's like, you know. And then when I talk to my cat, who unfortunately is now just gotten out of surgery, having had to have a lot of his teeth extracted, I'm very upset.
Sorry. Wow.
It's a different voice, and that part of me that just said that is a different part of me. That's the cat mom, who's like, oh, poor baby. And
But that wasn't the king.
no, the king is like, I expected you to do this. Why didn't you do it?
Would you say that that's boundaries that you put up around your parts?
I wish I did a better job. That is the word that has been my bête noire my whole life is trying to figure out boundaries. That's a big problem.
Marilyn, I agree with you 1,000,000,000%. I'm there as well. It was yesterday, walking into the studio office in this building, had my hand with the keys, had my hand on the door and about to turn the knob. And I don't know what popped in my head, but this was the message that dropped out of the sky. To me, you need to be more careful with who you give your time to.
Yeah.
And I heard it. And I was like, okay, all right. Let me think about that today as time goes on. But it's true, and I'm getting better at it. I've
Receiving those messages from yourself, higher self.
true. I've started filtering some people in my life that, yeah, I thought maybe I met them a few years ago. And I thought they were one thing, but they really weren't. And it's like, time to, season or a reason, right? So time to filter that out a little bit. Because it doesn't support my direction. And some may be just takers, so there's the boundaries that go up. But yeah, 100%. It's kind of tough doing that with the boundaries. Why is it so difficult?
Because our the very first thing that ever happened to us is we were born and we realized that if we didn't behave, we wouldn't get fit. So from the moment we are born, and there's one thing I like about myself is that I was born 2 weeks late and I came out left foot first. And I'm convinced that I somehow knew that this was not going to be a joyride and there's no way I was coming out of my head. I was going to land feet first. you
Wow.
know, and it's just, I mean, so I think the problem is that we are in denial of if you read, if you read the existentialists and you read, Kierkegaard and you think about things, basically the idea is we're trading pieces of our personality, our time, what you're talking about to survive. we want to stay up and watch TV, and mom wants you to go to sleep. You start crying and get slapped, and then you kind of realize that you are trapped. But if something is lost in your self-awareness because you've had to make a bad deal.
I'm going to ask this question. It's relevant to what we're talking about. If you were to go back in time, what would, like we just said before, boundaries, like we're still working on them, still working on them.
Mm.
What changes would you have made in the past, knowing what you know now about all of this work, but also knowing you better?
My first and my third marriage. Second one was good. That was 17
Okay.
years of my life that I'm not getting back.
I'm right there with you. And if we're going there with relationships, I will say that um, people show you who they are in the beginning, and you need to read that and process it and use it wisely
Mhm.
because they do. And that was my situation. I'm gonna let it go. Yeah, yeah. Years later, okay, there we go. Wow.
It's called satisficing, and we are indoctrinated to do that because we need to fit in. And very many of us, because of the cultural, I don't approve what's going on now. I just read somewhere that some woman married her dog, and I'm like, does that mean you're going to have sexual relations with your dog? I mean, that's what marriage, it's part of what marriage means. I'm like, I'm not really okay with that. I think that, dogs don't know what they're doing. It's like children.
Well, a few years ago, somebody married their TV, and
Well, that's okay.
it was symbolic of something. And yeah.
But my point is this is that the way that we've been indoctrinated, we have no choice but to settle and put up with people, and relationships are hard, all these tropes are true, but so much of it is that people don't give each other enough space. You have to sleep in the same bed. That's ridiculous. In other words, in traditional sense, when you get involved with somebody, you don't get double, you get half. But it's treated like you have no chance. Same thing when you're a kid. If you're a good kid, that means that you are not expressing your personality very often.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And so what we're dealing with, and one of the reasons that we're having sort of this revolution is that people are just, I don't condone violence, but I can understand getting fed up. And when you're a kid, did you ever have a tantrum? Of course you did. And what we're seeing a cultural tantrum. That's how I'm perceiving all this. They were like, we're getting ripped off. Food is expensive. You know, um, uh, whether or not people have a right to be here, they're people, and I'm seeing people being, treated roughly, and it hurts me. And again, the idea of whether things are constitutional goes right out the window when you're dealing with this situation. And Americans, especially in the world, we've been beaten down with inflation, which everybody pretends we're not having for quite a while. And what we're seeing a collective tantrum because no one like dad should be saying, okay, I see, even though I'm not seeing this, you're telling me this, let's do something about it. And that's what's going to stop all this. But it's the same thing. You get punished for trying to express yourself, and no one teaches you how you could do it in a more useful way.
Are you saying that many nowadays are, like a better description, throwing a tantrum because of frustration, but they're not, and it could be frustration with high taxes. I know that you're in New
Yeah,
York, I'm in New York,
yeah.
hello, and so many other things there, but they don't know how to express, but then they get judged because they're frustrated.
Well, that's right. There's no system that allows them. Now, this happens in personal life, and you see people doing this all the time. People who are very nice who just suddenly like fly, they just go off. And then later they'll say, "Oh, I don't have a filter." And the answer is no, it's not true. And one of the things that I'm going to get involved with is two things. One of them is I'd like to teach financial literacy to very young women, um, so they could have better relationships with men. Because what's wrecking everything is women tend to make more money now, men don't have it as much, and all of these things. Money destroys so many things. I'd like to fix that. And in the same way, I would like to teach people how to self-regulate. In other words, it's very difficult for people to accept the fact that they are being victimized. And if you just go, okay, I'm being victimized, like, when I was a kid, I was like, okay, I got bullied in school, at one point, and I was like, okay, I'm being victimized. I really am. It's nothing I did. It's a situation. If it wasn't me, they'd pick on someone else, better me than someone else, because I'm better, I'm tougher, I'm meaner. And what am I going to do about that? And after tears and powerlessness and whatever, I got all the other girls together and we made an anti-clique and we made sure that they could not continue to be effectively mean.
Hmm.
But I had to, but I mean, but you don't hear that. People don't get together and decide they're going to get rid of the mean girls, but you
But
can.
you said a word before, and it sounds like it fits here. System. Something was in place. You put something in place
That's
to.
what I do. That's what I do. That's why I'm so effective with people, and that's why I write these books. And my new book, again, the new book, which is called How to Thrive, How to Survive, during the holidays and other days, is a system. It's a system of self-regulation. You do the hug, you imagine the word, you tell a story about the word, you listen to what you told yourself, right? You acknowledge whatever is actually going on between all the different aspects of yourself. Give yourself another hug. And either you go and you write the story, you tell yourself the story. And that process of self-acknowledgement without judgment, but with a system, is what helps people really transform. So there needs to be more systems in place. I mean, systems are so simple. Some systems are, you wake up in the morning and the first time you start to think about, oh my God, what a day it's going to be, you go, you know what? That's good part of the problem. Not, let me change the system. Let me have some other input. But yes, that's a very, very wise thing, Steve, that you said.
It happens sometimes. You mentioned word. You come up with a word. You do the hug, and there's a word that pilots whatever you're going to write. Where does that word come from?
Right. The same place where the voice said to you, don't spend so much time with other people when you were turning the key in that lock. It's very symbolic. You can't make What a great opening for a book. The guy's standing going into his office and he's turning the key to the door of the lock of his office, and the inner voice comes in and says, hey, maybe you shouldn't spend time with all those people. That's a fantastic opening for a book or a play.
It's the truth, though.
But that's the point. It's the ability to flip the truth and turn it into a metaphor. That is what makes it into creativity. And you just did that. So that's where this comes from. And the point about the self-acknowledgement hug is you are able to access that point at will. That's why the system is so unique. I've never found anything else that lets you do that.
Well, I think also if you're mindful of things and you're maybe living in the moment instead of letting life take you, but really being truly intentional, I probably would have missed that message if it was
100%.
5 years ago.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the other side, whatever larger part or whatever it is that does this never gives up and never stops. You're constantly being given opportunities to improve.
Do you feel that that is your being, your subconscious, if you will? It's telling you something you need to know. I've often heard before that if you have a memory that keeps coming up from something in your past, could even be your childhood, that is your subconscious saying, hello, I need help here. There's a connection to your adult life, and we need to work on this thing that was back then. So I'm going to bring in that memory again.
100%. But
Hmm.
it's the way we handle it. Instead of, pathologizing it and going to do, EMDR or something to do that. Not that that stuff is not all good, and that's what it's important. But the real thing that's missed is that when you are talking to yourself, something needs to be understood. You know what I mean? That is, the action is the understanding. You don't necessarily need to do a lot of stuff around it, but you need to really take that in, you know.
Hmm.
And I had this a few moments ago. I have I'm trading something, and I hired somebody to help me do something, and I'm not 100% happy with what they did. And I've been, and someone else said, well, do this. These are people that I really trust. And I've been going back and forth for almost 4 days. And finally, just before we got on the call, I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror. I was going to curl my hair for you. And the inner voice came in and said, you think you made a mistake, but you probably didn't. You just don't know how long it's going to take. And it was like, boom, the issue is not my decision. It's that I don't understand the time involved.
And in this instance, the time involved in.
In trading, in other words, you buy something, you need to wait and give it time. It's like growing things. You need to let things grow.
Gotcha.
I'm not good at that. I'm very much of a cut flower sort of person. And but I'm saying that the fact that that came in was like, oh, the conflict is not over whether it's right or wrong. You know it's right because you wouldn't have done it. It's just how long is it going to take for it to be right? And that for me was my subconscious in that moment where I was very involved with curling my hair, relaxing into the present and finding the beginnings of a solution to something that's been driving me nuts.
Do you find that the solution will always be there? There will be an answer.
You have to ask.
You have to ask and be patient.
Yeah, but you have to. I mean, the thing that people don't do is they complain, they pray, they meditate, they do all kinds of things. The rules of engagement on whether it's the other side or larger consciousness, whatever that other force that is much smarter than we are, is they can't help you unless you ask. There's
You know,
rules of
it's interesting. You said something before that resonated with me. There's a song came out mid 70s, wasn't a huge hit, memorable by the artist Eric Clapton. And this song has been coming up for me a ton of times. Back in October, I was sitting by the beach. I must have played it 40 times over and over again. And the lyrics are, and by the way, the song is called Let It Grow. And you just mentioned that. Standing at the crossroads, trying to read the signs to tell me which way I should go to find the answer. And all the time I know, plant your love and let it grow. And I'm trying to process why that's coming up for me.
It's a direct message from your subconscious. It's not political.
100%. So it could be making a decision. You're standing at the crossroads, but let the answer come from your heart. Plant that.
Do the self-acknowledgement hug. That's exactly what it's for. Do you understand? That's exactly what it's intended to do. Is it opens up a channel. You have a system, right? You give yourself the hug. You think of a word. You put it in a little bubble chart here. That little bubble chart. You can't really see that, but it's in my book, that one.
Oh, I got you. I can see it. Yeah.
And then you let yourself have 4 images, and then you set a timer for 2 minutes, and you write a little story about it, and then you reflect on the story, and then an hour later you're in the shower or you're you know on the phone, and boom. And I like having it be repeatable. The other thing I tell people, it's a little off topic, but you'll get the idea, is I say, if you want to be lucky, you have to plan on it. Right? In other words, the same thing as always, you have to tell, you always ask me, what am I up to? Why have I had such a success? I plan on being lucky.
Mm.
It's the same thing. And I plan on making myself available for those other forces, whatever they are, whether they're within me or without me, is of no interest to me ever. And to me, I mean, honestly, it's a form of intellectual masturbation, because you're not going to get an answer. You're going to get a belief, which is useless, but you're not going to get an answer. So, focus on getting what you want. So, make a point of this. So the way for you to deal with this Clapton song is go do the word of the day. Seriously.
I'm going to do it. And tonight,
Yeah.
I plan a quiet night, being intentional in that. That's what I will be doing.
Yeah, and try it a few times and see what happens. I mean, the things that I've been able to accomplish, people, are just amazing, and myself too, in terms of this. And but what I'm trying to say to you is that the hard part for us is to admit that we have been victimized, whether it's by ourselves or someone else. In other words, part of the reason I'm having a problem with this is that I have a bad tendency to let very, very intelligent men dictate sometimes what I do financially, and I'm much smarter than all of them, and I need to not do that. But I'm culturally indoctrinated. I come from a family of bankers and lawyers, right? So I had to forgive myself. I had to say, you know what, there you go again. But you might be right. You see what I mean? It becomes
Completely. But you know what? Credit to you. You are aware, fully aware, and that shows up, in a number of different times. We're out of time. I just keep going. To your point before.
But I'd say we enjoy talking to each other. One of these days we'll have to have a social event and have dinner or something.
That'd be great. Yeah, or do an hour.
That would be amazing.
Best way to find you. I know that you have a couple of different websites, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they all got organized.
Okay.
That was one of the many things we accomplished this year. It was a good year for this stuff. And it's still MarilynHorowitz.com. And I'm giving a biweekly webinar, and I am basically helping people get a writing system.
Love it. Love it. And the Marilyn Initiative. You've even just the hug, you shared that previously. I honestly forgot about it until you brought it up. I'm not forgetting it this time, and I'm going to do it later with the word. I'm looking forward to what word may come up. What's going to come up?
Yeah, and let yourself do it 3 times and work with a timer. You give yourself the hug, then you set the timer for 1 to 2 minutes, and you do the cluster. Make sure you make the drawing, because the drawing gets your brain to do certain things. It's all organized. It's all neuroscience.
Gotcha.
You
Yeah, it's almost as if the hug is like the key.
It is the key. Exactly.
Amazing. Marilyn, thank you so much for today. We will catch up soon.
Okay, I think we're set for next week, so I'll see you then.
Looking forward. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.